Well, I'm happy to be here today. Thanks for having me. I'd like to read from my new book that's coming out in April. It's called Paradise Drive. I think it's 88 sonnets. This isn't the cover, this is the bound galley. That's why it's so boring. I can send you a high-res pic of the cover. We finalized it last week. It's really wonderful. It's an actual road sign in Marin that says Paradise Drive, and that functions as the title of the book. And when we took the pic, the sign happened to be blowing in the wind, so it looks like it's going off its hinges, which is a perfect metaphor for this book, which is, it offers a slightly skewed perspective. It's somewhere over 80 sonnets linked in a narrative featuring a protagonist named Pilgrim. I'm trying to do something different in this book. This is my 5th book. I'm kind of distressed by the going towards the middle I'm seeing in the thousands of poetry books that are being published every year, and even more distressed by the way the audience is going the opposite direction. Frankly, trying to write a book that is high quality work that is also something people want to read. And that's why the book makes a crossover into fiction and has a strong narrative and a story. You know, there are only 3 plots in the world, and this is one of them. This is someone going on a journey. Her name is Pilgrim. She embodies some aspects of my life. As Kay Ryan says, you can't write about a glass of water without pouring yourself into the glass. So there are certainly some aspects from my life, things I've seen and heard and read about, but a lot of it is purely made up, as it should be in art. And the interesting thing, the difficult thing, is that I chose the sonnet form to convey the story. Not that others haven't done this, many have, far better than I. Pushkin's Eugene Onegin, Vikram Seth's The Golden Gate. I think the original inspiration for the book was James Cummins' linked sestinas called The Whole Truth. Do you know that book? Well, he based it on the Perry Mason series, only his Perry Mason is really cracked. And he weaves all kinds of tragedy and humor and social commentary into the book, much in the same way that John Berryman does in the Dream Songs. And I was thrilled when Tom Lux, in his endorsement, compared my book to the Dream Songs, because that was something I was familiar with, loved, and admired, and something of what I was trying to do in this book. So my protagonist's name is Pilgrim, and she grew up in Rust Belt, Pennsylvania, in a family of modest means, first in her family to graduate from college, and made her long way out to California, where she finds herself in the glittering mecca of Marin. And she finds herself drawn into this lifestyle of Marin, primarily through the schools where children are, and through going to these fancy fundraisers and cocktail parties, most of which she spends in the bathroom, reading, getting high, whatever. And so the book has 3 sections, and each section opens with a poem narrated from the bathroom. There are a lot of bathrooms in this book, and I'll read a couple of them to you now. Cocktail party. Cowed by all those straight, white teeth, Pilgrim ran for the bathroom, not for coke, as others supposed, but for something more covert and rare, a book, or any bit of anything written, an antidote to the Twitter out there. It could be the Times, or a Wall Street Journal stowed by the toilet, or the labels on the bottles of balms ranked at the sink. She spent one dismal fete with an issue of Your Bird Dog Today, and that taught her the value of purse cubic feet and to bring in her own stash. And in this way she read 99 cantos, near tears, when she thanked her hostess, best party in years. Here's another one that opens the 3rd section. Actually, there are 4 sections in this book. The 3rd section is called The Fire is Falling, and the section titles are all from William Blake. you know where again. Here she sits again, the door dead bolted against the bright party. At last, alone, free to sneak a smoke and a few lines from the book shoved into her purse en route. No one knows I'm here, Pilgrim's first thought, and in the end her best thought, followed by the less pleasant doubt that she'd be very much missed in the tall Tudor manor tonight, where the Veuve Clicquot brims and the lambs trimmed into chops the size of her thumbs. A martyr sometimes gets hungry and scared, is troubled by visions or numbed by scars. Tonight, all four, as words blur into stars. This next one is a takeoff on Wordsworth's sonnet called Nuns Fret Not. And that one was written very much in the tradition of sonnets that are about other sonnets, about the form. Nuns fret not, after Wordsworth. Pilgrim's inside the frame here, and guesses she's liked it that way. If nuns fret not in their narrow cells, why then should she? Her cot has, after all, got a very nice mattress and custom duvet. But under the green hum of the all-night lights, she, almost, makes out some other sound. A break in the rhythm, a knock in the engine of warm, rocking dark. For the lights in their way do emit darkness. The men on their knees in the dirt of the park she jogs in, a Food Not Bombs t-shirt, a friend's son's legs lost in Iraq. Iraq? What is Iraq doing in here? She's screwed. Something is knocking. The size of a world. And then the last section called O Earth Return. And these sections, by the way, very, very roughly follow the divisions in the Divine Comedy, where Dante, led by his guide, Virgil, visits paradise, paradiso, hell, inferno, purgatory, purgatorio, and the Divine Comedy only has 3 sections, but they start out on earth. And in my book, the sections are reversed, and the pilgrim in my book ends up on earth. Prayer for my new daughter. A soul in chrysalis, in first agonized molt, must choose, ladies or men's. For some, for you, these small rooms are fraught, an open field where lines are drawn. Think of the white-only signs, or Serrano's Piss Christ, and Duchamp's Fountain, pitted with acid and ice picks, defaced. As for restrooms called bathrooms with urinals, no, his words will never dismantle the master's house. For an hour I have walked and prayed, considering ice picks, how they're made to fit a blind hand, how kept so well honed. You are soft as sown grass and fierce as cut glass. You pack your new purse with lipstick and mace. So I think those kind of give you an idea of the architecture of the book, the structure of the book. Within that overarching storyline, there are a number of sub-stories. There's a story about Pilgrim's son with autism and his treatment in school and various things that happen. There's the story of the death of her parents. There's the story of parties are a big deal, and in one section, section 1, there's a whole series of there's one poem that is in 7 parts, and each part is a personification of one of the 7 deadly sins as reimagined in Marin County. So that was kind of fun. And you can probably tell from the poems that I'm trying really hard to use humor to counterbalance the darkness in these poems. There is a lot of darkness and a lot of sardonic social commentary, which is just right there in the tradition of the sonnet form. But the sonnet itself deserves some mention. I really admire the form for its elasticity and am not a slavish follower of it. It's the thing I started with. It's the way the work came to me, literally came to me in sonnet forms. The first germ of this book happened in 2009 in one great insomniac rush. I sat down and wrote 30 sonnets in a row, and that's where it all started. But where the sonnet form didn't serve the book, I didn't hesitate to bend it, break it, and sometimes abandon it. 2 of these poems don't have 14 lines, which some people think is the cardinal rule for a sonnet. Some of them are perfect sonnets. Some of them are perfect Petrarchan sonnets. Some of them are perfect Shakespearean sonnets. Some of them, scholars will beat me to the mat and argue are not sonnets at all. But I think they are, because I take that Annie Finch rule that if it kind of fits in the palm of your hand, and the Urban Dictionary rule that if it sets off an explosion, then it's a sonnet. Maybe I'll read the last poem in the book. This just came out in the Hudson Review. They took 4 of these sonnets just as the book was coming out, and they pushed up their publication so they could get them out in print before the book came out. So they're in the current issue. And in the Hudson Review, this is under the title The Notch, but here in the book it's called Preparation for Pirouette. And this is actually in terza rima, which is what Dante wrote in. When my newborn lay gray, silent and still, I saw a notch in the skin of his collarbone, a petal puckered by rain, or over an open mouth, a veil of chiffon sucked in, breath's first pirouette. When my mother lay dying, what pierced me was not her mouth's black, puckered O. It was not her hand going slack at the rails, or even her eye sunk into irisless stone. It was that last breath, suring the flesh at her throat, the sign that she, drawn utterly, inwardly taut, was braced to her clenched core against death. One day my turn to make a wreath of my arms, rise up on point, then whip, pivot, spot, be gone. Let my throat ache then, be notched, each flawed dawn. That poem owes a debt to Leon Stokesbury, which I mentioned in the notes to this book. And I think I might read one more. I'd like to read one that's really free form. It doesn't have any punctuation or capitalization. It's called The Fire is Falling. And this one, Southern Indiana Review just featured on their site. They have a YouTube site. They pick a couple poems from each issue and ask the authors to make vids, and I did, and it's up there. The Fire is Falling. A September wedding back at the Cape, 3 days without kids. Then he'll work in New York while she flies back to San Francisco alone. A good plan, till she misses her plane. She's en route to Boston when the fire is falling, and he's in Midtown. The circuit's jammed, and she's holding hands with a stranger at the quick stop, then sitting on the curb for a long time, dialing. The fire's still falling when he picks up the plume somewhere behind him. The fire falling, as it always has, this close. It has to be this close before she sees.